All right, let's dive right in. Today, we're unpacking some massive ideas from Tony Robbins' philosophy on creating real, lasting change in your life. It all boils down to what he calls the 3 master keys to unlocking your potential, and we're going to see how they all fit together. So, let's get into it.
Okay, so this quote right here, this is basically the whole foundation. The idea is simple, but it's incredibly powerful. It's not about the conditions of your life, it's about the decisions you make about those conditions. That is what truly shapes your destiny. Simple, right? But there's a catch.
And here is the catch. This is the big what if. If our destiny is really shaped by our decisions, what happens when we aren't even aware we're making them? What happens when we're just on autopilot, going with the flow?
Well, this leads to his core metaphor. This idea that inside every single one of us, there's a sleeping giant. You know that feeling, right? That little voice that says you're capable of so much more, that there's some incredible power you haven't tapped into yet? That's the giant. And for a lot of us, it stays asleep, buried under daily frustrations and routine.
And if you're thinking, okay, that sounds nice, but is it realistic? Well, just look at his own story. It's pretty wild. We're talking about a guy who was working as a janitor, literally worried about whether his old car would get him to work. Then, just 12 years later, he's flying his own private helicopter, and he's hovering over the exact same building he used to clean. That's proof of the kind of radical change that's possible when you wake that giant up.
So why do so many of us feel stuck? He uses this great analogy called the Niagara Syndrome. Imagine life as a river. Most people, he says, just kind of jump in. They don't pick a destination, they just float, carried along by the currents of everyday life, their fears, their habits, and then one day they look up and, they're 5 feet from Niagara Falls, and they don't have a paddle. That feeling of being totally out of control, that's the Niagara Syndrome.
Okay, so how do you avoid going over the falls? How do you grab the oars and start steering? The solution, he says, is to get a handle on what he calls your master system. Think of it like the internal operating system that's running all of your thoughts, your feelings, and your actions. And that's what we're here to do. We're going to break down the 3 keys to taking conscious control of that very system.
All right, let's get into it. Key number 1, the twin forces of life. This is all about the 2 core engines that are behind literally everything you do, whether you realize it or not.
It really boils down to this: pain and pleasure. Every single thing we do as human beings is driven by one of 2 things: the need to avoid what we think will cause pain, or the desire to gain what we think will bring us pleasure. That's it. And the real secret isn't just knowing this, it's learning how to consciously use these forces to get what you want.
And what's wild is seeing how these exact same forces can produce completely different lives. Take these 2 examples from the source. You have Donald Trump, who apparently links massive pleasure to having the biggest and the best of everything, and intense pain to being second best. And then you have Mother Teresa, who linked pleasure to helping others and easing their suffering, and pain to seeing that suffering continue. Same 2 forces, completely different lives. So how does our brain actually create these automatic links? He calls them neuroassociations. You can think of them as the wiring in your nervous system that instantly connects something, an idea, a person, a food, a smell, to a gut feeling of either pain or pleasure. And sometimes this wiring gets installed in a split second, from one single powerful experience.
He tells this great story from when he was a kid. He wanted to be cool like his dad, so in his mind, beer was linked to pleasure. So one day, his mom let him try it, but on one condition: he had to drink an entire 6-pack. Well, after just a few, he got incredibly sick. And boom, in that one awful moment, his brain completely rewired itself. The smell of beer was no longer linked to pleasure, it was linked to the intense pain of being sick. He never had a drink of beer again. That's a neuroassociation in action.
Okay, so if pain and pleasure are the engine, the gas and the brake, what's steering the car? What's the GPS telling us what to avoid and what to go after? That brings us to our second key, our beliefs. They're the maps we use to interpret everything.
And this story just nails the point perfectly. You have 2 brothers, right? They grew up in the same house with the same abusive, alcoholic father. One brother ends up a drug addict in prison. When asked why, he says, "With a father like that, what else could I be?" The other brother becomes a huge success, great family, happy life. When they ask him why, you know what he says? "With a father like that, how could I be anything else? I would never be like him." It was the same event, but two totally different beliefs about what that event meant. That's the power we're talking about.
Now, not all beliefs are created equal. Robbins breaks them down into 3 levels of certainty. So at the very bottom, you've got an opinion. This is pretty flimsy, you know? It's an idea you have, but it's based on weak references and can be changed pretty easily with new information.
But then you level up to a belief. Now, a belief is much, much stronger. It's an idea that you feel certain about because you've supported it with stronger references, your own experiences, things you've read, or powerful emotions. A belief gives you that feeling of certainty.
And then at the top, you have a conviction. A conviction is on a whole other level. It's a belief you hold with so much emotional intensity that you're not just certain, you actually get angry or defensive if someone even questions it. Convictions are the powerful, often unconscious commands that are really running our lives.
And that brings us to the final and honestly the most powerful key of all. It's the master belief that directs your entire life. We're talking about your identity. It's the story you tell yourself, consciously or not, about who you fundamentally are. This distinction is so critical. It's the difference between saying, I have a drug problem versus I am a drug addict. I mean, just feel the difference. If you have a problem, it's something separate from you. It's something you can work on and solve. But if you believe you are the problem, I am a drug addict, well, how do you fix being something? It feels permanent. It's like a prison you've built for yourself. So why is identity so powerful? It's because we have this incredibly deep, fundamental human need to be consistent with how we see ourselves. It drives us. If you define yourself as a leader, you will find ways to act like one. If you define yourself as shy, you'll find ways to be shy. Our actions will almost always fall in line with the person we believe we are, which makes our identity the ultimate force shaping our behavior. So let's zoom out. These 3 master keys, the twin forces, your beliefs, and your identity, they're not just interesting concepts. They are tools. This is a framework you can actively use to grab the steering wheel of your own life and, well, awaken that giant within. So here's how you can actually put this all together. It's a toolkit for change. Step 1. You master the twin forces. You have to consciously link massive, unbearable pain to the old behaviors you want to stop and link incredible pleasure to the new ones you want to start. Step 2. You use that leverage to rewire your beliefs. You question the limiting ones until they crumble, and then you consciously install new empowering beliefs to take their place. And finally, step 3, the big one. You use all of that to consciously expand your identity. You stop defining yourself by who you've been, and you decide, right now, who you are committed to being from this day forward. And that really leaves us with one final provocative question. Since the way you define your identity literally defines your life, if you were to change just one single core belief about who you are, what would you truly be capable of? What giant would you awaken?